coming. We really appreciate that you took time to come and see us and interact with us. We're delighted to be celebrating the 79th year since the UN was created. You all know the Charter, the UN Charter, was adopted after the Second World War, and the idea was to create a more just, prosperous future. And we at the UN here wanted to mark this day by focusing on the work that the UN does in Pakistan, and more importantly also to remind everybody, our member states who are present here, on why the UN was created, the concept of multilateralism, creating a just and a fair world for everybody. Pakistan's role in the UN is incredibly important. Pakistan has been a member of the UN for 77 years since its creation, and it has played an incredible role in the creation of the UN, in the development of the values of the UN system. Many of you will see the presentation we will make on many of the Pakistanis that have played an important role since the UN was set up. This works. This is just maybe I'll come back to this in terms of timeline of what the UN does, but I wanted to specifically for the media to know the role of Pakistan in forming of who the UN is today. From Begum, Shaista, to Ahmad, Shah, Bokhari, to the first female head of a UN agency, Dr. Nafis Sadik in the UN FPA. Pakistan has played an incredible role. I've worked for the UN in many countries, and some of the countries I've worked in West Africa. I've lived and were protected by Pakistani peacekeepers, be it in Liberia, Somalia, and today in Central Africa. Pakistan has sent its men and its women to contribute to peace and coexistence across the world. Pakistan remains one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping, and we are thankful for the contribution that this country has made. One other favorite Pakistani that has completely shaped, especially the UN's development agenda, is Mahbub and the Human Development Index. Whenever you hear about the Human Development Index, always remember it's a Pakistani who had set up the entire index and has pushed the UN to think more on investing in people than just focusing on the GDP growth. Again, another important role that Pakistan has played in the development of the norms and the values of the UN system. Quickly, these are just some evidence of what the UN does globally. Assisting projects, you see 131 million people fleeing famine, some of the work the UN does. I don't want to go all of them, but just this for the media to know the UN's outreach across the world. I know you may be thinking, with all the problems that's going on in the world, be it Gaza, be it Ukraine, be it the challenges we are seeing in multilateralism, we wanted to remind you that the UN still does all the kind of work, all the figures you will see across the world in bringing a more just and peaceful world. And today, for my colleagues here, you will hear the UN, what the UN does here in Pakistan. Another important part of the norms and the values of the UN system is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And you will see there, I just mentioned Begum, Shaista, and her role in pushing for equality and ensuring women's rights and reduction of child marriage. This was a specific push by Pakistan to include in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, something that Pakistani should be very much proud of. So sometimes when you hear this Declaration of Human Rights, people say that these values from other parts of the world. So we always wanted to remind that actually key components of this is very much Pakistani-led processes. This is to give you, you'll have these copies before you go. You go in terms of the major components of the contribution of Pakistan across the UN since it was created. Okay, now what do we do in Pakistan? We are here at the behest and the request of the government of Pakistan. The UN comes here because Pakistan has asked us to come, and we work across the humanitarian development side of our work. We are present in 266 offices in Pakistan across all the provinces. We have close to 4,000 staff, 3,900 is going up in terms of our staff structure. But more importantly, more than 80% of the UN here are Pakistani staff. It's always to remember that the face, the work that the UN does here is mostly done by Pakistanis. This is just to give you our geographical coverage. We're everywhere in the country. We focus mainly on where the needs are most. You've seen how the UN helped in terms of response of the 2022 floods. And on top of that, we constantly support communities across the country, and we support both at the district, provincial, and the capital level. But just to re-emphasize, the UN is an intergovernmental organization. We're here working behind government. Government doesn't mean only Islamabad, government means district, it means province, and this is to give you a sense of what we do across the country. The SDGs, again, a huge contribution in the formation of the SDG from Pakistani side. The 17 goals that we work in supporting Pakistan achieved. The globally, we're not doing very well. It's not only a Pakistani challenge. I was in New York last week for the retreat by the Secretary General, and one of the push we've been told as a UN is helping government is to accelerate and help governments meet sustainable development goals. Globally, we are about 17% on target. We're coming to an end of the year. Early next year, from January, we'll have only 5 years to go in meeting the goals. Of course, the challenges and to meeting the goals are very steep, but the call from our Secretary General is never to give up until the last minute to make sure that Pakistan and many other countries achieve the sustainable development goals. This is to give you a sense of the volume of work across the goals, what the UN does here. You will see the biggest work we do is around SDG 2, which is about hunger. This mainly comes to the work we do with humanitarian work. On health is another huge area that the UN works on, and you see the push to make sure that polio becomes history in Pakistan. This is the work that the UN does in supporting the government. In education, the Prime Minister will not declare an education emergency is another area that the UN supports across the board. Climate change, issues around biodiversity, and in the question and answer session, you will also hear more about that. Issues of gender equality, a big challenge for the country, and the UN is committed in helping Pakistan meet its own ambition of ensuring that all its citizens are represented at the political and economic levels. The issues of refugees, we have our colleague from PNCA, she will be answering the questions. The UN supports Pakistan's generous commitment to receiving millions of refugees, mainly from Afghanistan, but also from other parts of the world. We will hear more of the breakdown on what that is. I have lived in many countries. Very few countries have been as generous to refugees as Pakistan. It's incredible how much Pakistan has invested in making sure that refugees are looked after. This is to give you a sense of the 5 priorities the UN works under in Pakistan. These priorities are decided by the government of Pakistan. As I said in my initial remarks, we're an intergovernmental organization. We don't come and say this is what you should do. The government tells us these are the 5 priorities that they want the UN to support. 1 on basic services, 2 on gender equality and women's empowerment, 3 on climate change, 4 on economic inclusive growth issues, and 5th on governance. With that, I'll probably ask our colleagues to say brief words on what we're doing across that 5 areas, but I'll come back to that before Is this the last slide? No. On basic services, this is a pillar that is led by our colleagues from UNICEF, issues around education, and WHO, issues around health and polio work. Pakistan and Afghanistan are the only two countries that are left with wild polio, and we are really committed to support government's plan to eradicate that. So you will see a lot of work around polio, a lot of work around education. Pakistan has a huge challenge with the education with 26 million children out of school. How do we make sure that every child gets the opportunity to realize their full potential? And that is why we welcome the Prime Minister's commitment and force around education. So that is around education. With the gender equality, I'll ask my colleagues from UN Women to say brief words on the work we do on gender equality. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Respect Coordinator. On gender equality, the United Nations in Pakistan work together to support women and girls in order for them to benefit from an enabling environment where they are empowered, where they can reach their fullest potential, and where their rights, be it human rights, social rights, cultural rights, economic rights, political rights, are protected. What we do, we extend our support to the government to ensure that they monitor and report the implementation of the national and international commitment on gender equality and women empowerment. We also empower women through gender-responsive policy and ensure that they are protected from violence against women and girls and harmful practices. We empower women, and we also ensure that women have safe space and harassment-free environment. Also, we ensure that women have rights and agency so that they could actually be supported to rise to the leadership position, either in public or in private sectors. Lastly, we would like to see women in active participation in, and they have the ability to enjoy economy and reach their fullest potential. So that's briefly on gender equality and women empowerment.
Thank you very much. On climate change, you all know the work around the Living Indus, a big initiative in preserving and restoring the Indus River, which is almost the basis of Pakistani civilization and Asian civilization. A lot of issues around the cleaning up of the Indus, issues around biodiversity, issues around waste management, all our work the UN supports government efforts at the provincial and working closely with the Ministry of Climate Change here in Islamabad. On the work on economic growth and issues around decent work, I'll ask our colleagues from the head of ILO to say a few words in this regard.
Thank you, Asi. Outcome 4 is about sustainable, inclusive economic growth and decent work. In other words, it is about creating livelihoods, jobs, and employment opportunities, and ensuring that the world of work in Pakistan respects fundamental principles and rights, that there is no child labor, that there is no bonded labor, that there are no discriminatory practices, that there is freedom of association, and that workers feel safe and secure at their workplaces. It is about promoting a workforce that is more diverse, productive, and competitive. The outcome is also about ensuring that Pakistani workers can perform their jobs in conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. Above all, Outcome 4 reminds us that labour is not a commodity. In practice, our support to the government and partners under this outcome focuses on strengthening national policies and legislation for more job-rich growth. We carry out livelihood, entrepreneurship, and skills training, and we work to strengthen the competitiveness of small and medium-sized enterprises. Making the world of work more inclusive is including training women on leadership skills, advancing fair recruitment practices, and ensuring better protection and rights for workers. Lastly, the ratification and application of international labour standards to combat all forms of unacceptable forms of work falls under this outcome. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, head of ILO is that specific field is led by him and his team, but also all the UN teams contribute to that specific field. Now I invite UNDP, which leads our governance team. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mahbub. Very good morning to all. So on the governance outcomes, as outcome 5 of our UNSCDF. So basically what the outcome 5 wants to achieve is that by 2027, the people in Pakistan, especially women and children, and the most vulnerable and marginalized, have increased access to fundamental human rights, gender equality, and fundamental freedom through inclusive, accountable, and effective, and evidence-driven governance systems and rule of law institutions at all levels of government, contributing to good governance and stability. So that's the very big objective of that outcome 5. In a very simple language, what outcome 5 is doing is that United Nations agencies are working with both duty bearers, meaning governments, rights holders, meaning all of us, and also with watchdogs, with media, and with civil society. So if I give you an example, for example, we have been last year when Pakistan was having the election. So through the support of the United Nations, we work with the ECPs, and one of the outcomes, which is not really visible, but it is there, was our support to issue the National Identification Card, NIC, to almost 17,000 beneficiaries, and most of them, 64,000, are women, for example. So this is one example of the work of the outcome 5. We also work with the, for example, Ministry of Human Rights. We work with the Parliament, with the Women Parliamentary Caucus. We work with the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics. And because the governance, data governance is extremely important in not only for Pakistan, but actually all over the world. So with this, and the reason why we would like you to be here today also because the role that media plays. So we have also invested our energy and resources on working with the media and through, for example, capacity training for professional media, for journalists, and let's just give you an example of that. So basically, we would be happy to take any question on this, but governance sounds very complicated, but it is related to all of us on a daily life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Two more points, then I'll stop, and it'll be all your time to ask us all the questions you have. One, in September, the Secretary General led the Summit of the Future. Again, Pakistan was very active in that process, and they've adopted what they call the Pact for the Future Global Digital Compact and Declaration for the Future Generation. This was in a period where nobody thought this was possible. You know, nowadays we have a lot of gridlock in the international system. We're probably as divided as we've been for a very long time globally. And the Secretary General was able to push this important declaration through consensus. Imagine consensus with 190 countries agreeing to it. It's incredible thinking this can still be achieved. It tells you multilateralism is the only platform, and the UN is the only platform where the international community can come together. From Samoa to Pakistan to South Africa to Papua New Guinea to come and discuss things that are a common challenge for the world. And it's through multilateralism and through the UN system we we can solve our differences and find our common agenda moving forward. Of course, we don't agree on everything. The globe is divided. People have different perspectives, different interests. And sometimes when we look at the challenges we're facing and the crisis we are in today, be it Ukraine, Gaza, we tend to lose hope that maybe these things cannot be overcome. I always want to remind people that we've overcome bigger challenges and that we can overcome the challenges of the future, and the work that the Secretary General has been doing around the Summit of the Future is an attempt to really look at what we can overcome. How do we govern artificial intelligence? If left untouched, can it cause more harm than good? How can we ensure that this becomes a source of our common humanity? So this is the kind of thing that the UN does. We're in the business of hope. We always believe that tomorrow is better than today. And we're the last guardians of hope. And I always say to my friends in Pakistan, we are deeply committed to this country's progress. With all the challenges Pakistan has, I and my colleagues are convinced that the solutions to Pakistan's challenges are available today by the Pakistani people, and the UN is with you in charting a future where every Pakistani child, girl, and boy has the opportunity to realize their full potential. Thank you very much. And the final announcement, we have the UN Day family-oriented event at PNCA this Saturday from 3 to 8. Please come along, bring your families, advertise. You get to see all the UN agencies, and they'll tell you more of what they're doing. Young Pakistanis who are interested in joining the UN will have an opportunity to have a career booth, to listen to what the process of joining the UN to contribute to our common agenda, but also an opportunity to have fun in a family-oriented environment. Thank you very much, and I'm open to respond to any questions you have.